We're now in the approach phase, everything looking good. Altitude 5,200 feet.
Okay, all flight controllers, gonna go for landing. Retro.
Go.
Control.
Altitude control.
GNC. Eastbound. Surgeon. Go. Capcom, we're go for landing.
Altitude 42, Houston, you're go for landing.
Over 3,070.
Welcome to the Alien Probe Snippet. I'm Dr. Bill. In 1947, there was a wave of UFO sightings all across the United States. In 1948, the newly formed United States Air Force created Project Sign to investigate these sightings and determine their source, cause, and the potential threat to national security. Originally, when they approached this investigation, the concern was that these objects were due to spying by the Soviet Union, sending specialized craft to observe military installations and infrastructure in the United States. Because of the unusual type of craft that was being seen, the speed of the craft and the altitude of the craft, it was quickly determined that UFOs were not from the Soviet Union. The investigation by Project Sign took a better part of 1948. And at the end of that period of time, they wrote a report titled The Estimate of the Situation. This report, only a handful of the thick black-covered legal-size estimate reports were ever made, were sent up the chain of command to the head of the Air Force, Vandenberg. One of the conclusions of this report was that the craft were potentially extraterrestrial. The hypothesis was that these craft could be coming from Venus or Mars, and at the time, many scientists believed that Venus and Mars had the possibility of being inhabited, and this was before probes had gotten closer to these planets, showing what the conditions are really like on the surface, with Mars's extreme temperature, thin atmosphere, no canals were visible, no structures, and Venus with its carbon dioxide atmosphere and high temperatures. Vandenberg rejected the report. The reports were subsequently ordered to be burned. A few copies survived up until 1951, when Colonel Ruppelt was able to read a copy when he took over Project Blue Book. Subsequently, Project Grudge was created, and as Ruppelt stated in his book, this period of mind changing bothered me. Here were people deciding that there was nothing to this UFO business right at a time when the reports seemed to be getting better. The next project was Project Grudge, and it seems that Project Grudge's agenda was to disprove and discourage the idea that UFOs were anything other than hallucinations or misidentification of phenomenon, weather phenomenon, or aircraft. Currently, 2 documents have been discovered in the Sign and Grudge papers in the National Archive. These documents surprisingly mirror the preliminary assessment of identified area phenomena presented to Congress this year. The first document, secret, labeled secret, Department of the Air Force, Headquarters, United States Air Force, Washington, 3 November 48. Subject, Flying Object Incidents in the United States. 2, Commanding General, Air Material Command, Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, Dayton, Ohio. 1, by letter dated 30 December 1947, from the Director of Research and Development Headquarters, United States Air Force, your headquarters was required to establish Project Sign. 2, the conclusions appear inescapable that some type of flying object has been observed, identified, and the origin of these objects is not discernible to this headquarters. It is imperative, therefore, that efforts to determine whether these objects are of domestic or foreign origin must be increased until conclusive evidence is obtained. The needs of national defense require such evidence in order that appropriate countermeasures may be taken. 3. In addition to the imperative need for evidence to permit countermeasures, it is necessary of informing the public as to the status of the problem. To date, there has been too little data to present to the public. The press, however, is about to take it into its own hands and demand to be told what we do or do not know about the situation. Silence on our part will no longer be acceptable. Silence on our part will no longer be acceptable. 4. Request immediate information as to your conclusions to date and your recommendations as to the information to be given to the press. Your recommendation is required also as to whether that information should be offered to the press or withheld until it is actively sought by the press. By Commander of the Chief of Staff, C.B. Cable, Major General, U.S. Air Force, Director of Intelligence, Office of Deputy Chief Staff Operations. A response to this memo was sent 5 days later. To Chief of Staff, United States Air Force, Washington, D.C., 8 November 1948. 1. In attempting to arrive at conclusions as to the nature of identified flying object incidents in the United States, this command has made a study of approximately 180 such incidents. Data derived from initial reports have been supplemented by further information obtained from checklists submitted by mail, from interrogations of other field agencies, and by personal investigation by personnel of the command in the case of incidents that seem to indicate the possibility of obtaining particularly significant information. 2. The objects described fall into the following general classification groups according to the shape or physical configuration. A. Flat disk of circular or approximate circular shape. B. Torpedo or cigar-shaped aircraft with no wings or fins visible in flight. C. Spherical or balloon-shaped objects. D. Balls of light with no apparent form attached. 3. Some objects cited have definitely been identified upon further investigation as weather or upper air scientific balloons of some type. A great many of round or balloon-shaped objects indicated in paragraph 2C above are probably of the same nature, although in most cases definite confirmation of that fact has been impossible to obtain. 4. Some of the objects have been identified as being astrophysical in nature. For example, in daylight sightings of the planet Venus has been reported as a round silvery object at extremely high altitude. 5. Arrangements for accomplishing a study of the psychological problems involved in this project are being made in coordination with the Aeromedical Laboratory at this headquarters. The possibility that some of the sightings are hallucinations, optical illusions, or even deliberate hoaxes has been considered. 6. Although explanations of many of the incidents can be obtained from the investigations described above, there remains a certain number of reports for which no reasonable everyday explanation is available. So far, no physical evidence of the existence of an unidentified sighting has been obtained. 7. All information that has been made available to this headquarters indicates that the disk, the cigar-shaped objects, and the balls of lights are not of domestic origin. Engineering investigation indicates that disk or wingless aircraft could support themselves in flight by aerodynamic means. It is probable that the problems of stability and control could also be solved for such aircraft. However, according to current aerodynamic theory in this country, aircraft with such configurations would have relatively poor climb, altitude, and range characteristics with power plant now in use. 8. The possibility that the objects are vehicles from another planet has not been ignored. However, tangible evidence to support conclusions about such a possibility are completely lacking. 9. Reference is made to the books of Charles Fort with an introduction by Tiffany Thayer, published in 1941. It appears that similar phenomena have been noted and reported for the past century or more. 10. In view of the above, the following conclusions are drawn. A. In the majority of cases reported, observers have actually sighted some type of flying object which they cannot classify as an aircraft within the limits of their personal experience. B. There is as yet no conclusive proof that unidentified flying objects, other than those which are known to be balloons, are real aircraft. C. Although it is obvious that some types of flying objects have been sighted, the exact nature of those objects cannot be established until physical evidence, such as that which would result from a crash, has been obtained. 11. It is not considered advisable to present to the press information on those objects which we cannot yet identify or about which we cannot present reasonable conclusions. In the event that they insist on some kind of statement, it is suggested that they be informed that many of the objects cited have been identified as weather balloons or astral bodies, and that investigation is being pursued to determine reasonable explanations for the others. 12. A report summarizing the results obtained from analysis of the data and a technical investigation of the engineering aspects of the objects described is nearly complete, and a copy will be forwarded to your headquarters in the near future. For the Commanding General H. M. McCoy, Colonel, U.S. Air Force, Chief Intelligence Department. That document was the estimate of the situation, which was later destroyed. Well, that's a wrap for today. This is Dr. Bill with Alien Probe Snippet.